应该说从2月2号，冰壶的比赛第一项开赛到现在，体育竞赛组织工作进展得非常的顺利圆满。我们的竞赛场地，无论是冰上项目的竞赛场地，还是雪上项目的竞赛场地，得到了世界知名运动员的高度认可和评价，也得到了国际单项体育联合会的高度认可和评价。我相信大家如果通过国际雪联的网站，和以及其他的一些媒体都可以查看到世界上很多知名运动员对北京冬奥会竞赛场馆的高度认可和高度评价。那么同时呢，我想跟大家分享这次北京冬奥会我们新增了一些运动项目那么新增的这些运动项目呢，基本的原则它是根据国际奥会的规定，由国际单项体育联合会商北京冬奥组委来共同提出由国际奥会的执委会来最终批准。它基本遵循的原则呢，一是要对青少年有足够的吸引力，二是在世界范围内要有一定的普及度和较高的国际化程度，三是符合国际奥会关于缩减办赛成本、降低办赛复杂性的总体原则，以及提高女性运动员参与度的原则主要是根据这样的一些原则。那么国际单项体育联合会和北京冬奥组委从2017年的下半年就开始就北京冬奥会的新增项目进行了充分的沟通和研究通过大家共同的研究和沟通一致以后提请了国际奥会执委会来批准。那么这个呢，从北京冬奥组委的角度呢，我们一是遵循国际奥会的原则，吸引更多的青少年能够关注北京冬奥会；二是积极的践行奥林匹克议程2020；三是努力的提高女性的参与程度，女子运动员的参与程度。所以这一届运动会呢，那么女子运动员的比例和男子运动员的比例女运动员的比例达到了45%这是一个历届冬奥会女子运动员参与比例最高的一届冬奥会第三个信息想跟大家分享的呢，那么为了组织好这一次北京冬奥会我们和国际单项体育联合会就每一个技术细节进行了充分的研究和沟通那么我们整个赛事呢，一共有286名国际技术官员来参加7个大项、15个分项、109个小项的竞赛组织工作同时呢，我们还有1879名国内的技术官员来参与冬奥会的这个相关的技术工作。特别对我们有意义的一件事情呢，就是我们通过北京冬奥会使我们一大批国内的技术官员得到了很好的锻炼，积累经验，是一个学习提高的过程。所以我们感觉到北京冬奥会也是一个独特的机会使得我们冬季运动的发展能培养出更多的优秀的技术力量第三呢，就是第四个我想给大家分享一下的呢，就是我们目前呢一些优秀运动员对我们的这个雪场特别给予了高度的评价，无论是北京延庆赛区高山滑雪，还是河北张家口赛区的雪上项目大家都给予了高度的评价认为我们这个场地是非常非常好的，完全达到了奥林匹克冬奥会的标准特别是对高山滑雪的场地有一些运动员评价这是他们见过 最好的、最具有挑战性的场地之一。因为北京冬奥会高山滑雪的场地啊，确实是很有挑战性的，是世界上最具有挑战性的少数的几个场地之一。但是雪质很好非常非常的令运动员满意，所以我们感觉到从这个角度来讲呢，也是非常好的。最后再跟大家分享呢，到目前为止北京冬奥组委和国际奥会的体育部与7个国际单项体育联合会保持着密切的沟通和联系，体育竞赛组织工作呢非常顺利，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's now pass over to Kit McConnell, Sports Director, for your comments. Kit.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning, everyone. Good to see you all again. And let me also start by thanking Xuan and his team. We have calls every single morning at 7 a.m. To coordinate the day, touch on any issues that have come up from the previous day, and really keep a one-team approach. And so thank you to you and your team. And I think Xuan, as you mentioned, has really shown that the organising committee continues to have a focus on the athletes, on sport, and really delivering these games in an exceptional way with that focus. From the sports side, with day 3, obviously, and that means we've had 12 medals awarded so far throughout Saturday and Sunday. 97 to go, so in no way are we relaxed. We're keeping that focus right till the last minute on the field of play and on the athletes. And every day there's a large number of medal events. There's a large number of athletes competing in their Olympic movement on these fields of play. So we're keeping that focus every single minute as we go through. I think as you've all seen and reflected on over the weekend, and Xuan touched on this, the venues are absolutely outstanding. We knew that going into the games from the test events. Equally, the operations around the field of play have really been excellent. So here, the feedback from the athletes themselves has been fantastic. And we've seen the performances already delivered on the field of play. Obviously, the Chinese gold medal on Saturday night in one of the new events. I think the mixed team relay in short track obviously galvanized the host country around their athletes. But equally, we've seen new countries, including New Zealand, with their first gold medal in the Olympic Winter Games yesterday. So this has really set a fantastic base moving forward. Of course, we continue to focus on those remaining events, those 97, and every competition session, which is so important to the athletes participating in those events. Really, this is about the teamwork between the organising committee, the venue owners and operators, fundamentally the international federations for each of the 7 sports. And here we really need to thank them for their outstanding work. And all of this comes together to hopefully be in the background and just keep the focus on those athletes. Of course, like any event of this size, there are points that come up on a daily basis, and we focus on these as well. Anything to do from transport and training to meal provisions in venues, not only for the athletes, but everyone involved, the equipment technicians, everyone else. So these remain our focus as well, not just what happens on the field of play, which is clearly the key, but everything that happens around the field of play in all of those venue operations. And where there are points raised, as I say, the teamwork between Beijing and the IOC and the federations is really exceptional in trying to address those points as quickly as possible. While we talk about sport and the athletes, I'd just like to give a bit of a general update in terms of the wider sport perspective of these games. And I think, as you know, with the final entries for these games, we had 91 national Olympic committees. That remains the case. All of those NOCs that were entered at the deadline are participating on the field of play, including the new NOCs at these games, Haiti and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Equally, we have 3 of those NOCs who have women at the Olympic Winter Games for the very first time, being Ecuador, Kosovo, and Malaysia. To put that into context, the 91 NOCs in Pyeongchang 4 years ago, we had 91 NOCs plus the Olympic athletes from Russia. So when you consider the pathway of qualification through 2 winter seasons of COVID impacts on the international sport landscape, it's really a fantastic reflection of the efforts of everyone to have that representation here in Beijing. The gender equality was touched on, and we do have record levels of female participation, record numbers of female athletes, record numbers of both female and mixed events at these games. In terms of the numbers, we've gone up from 41% in Pyeongchang 4 years ago to 45% female participation here in Beijing. And again, to put that, that's not just a statistic. Every female athlete that's here has a ripple effect in terms of the investment in women's sport in their respective countries, the international federations of the new events investing more into the promotion of those women's events, those women events having a higher profile and priority around World Cup and World Championship effect. So every single new event here, every single new quota for a female at the Games has even a wider impact outside the Games as well. Equally, our focus is on the showcasing of women's sport, and here on the competition schedule side, we've also promoted women's sport in showcasing it to the world. Examples being 4 years ago, there was a dominance of men's events around the opening and closing weekend. And this final Saturday, we've put 2 women's events additionally into the schedule: the women's biathlon and the 2 women bobsleigh. So we've got a much better balance in showcasing both in the opening weekend and the closing weekend around women's sport as well in the broadcast schedule. Another example being that in Pyeongchang 4 years ago on the final Saturday, we had 5 hours of women's sport. Here we've got 9. So almost doubling that women's sport content for the broadcast in the final weekend. In terms of the numbers of events, we had 44 women's events in Pyeongchang. That's gone up to 46 events here. And the mixed events that Xuan referenced, and we've seen a number of them already, for example, in curling and the short track, those have gone up from 8 to 12. So the total number of events that women will be participating in here has gone up from 52 to 58, and that's reflected also in those women's athlete numbers that I referenced. So a real step forward for gender equality in women's sport, and equally, that has a much wider impact than what we just see here in Beijing as well. In terms of looking forward, obviously, I touched on the success or the outstanding nature of the venues. This we're not going to just see in the 16 days of these games, but I think, Xuan, you touched on it as well. It's not just a physical legacy. There's a real legacy being built for winter sport in this country. We know the statistics on participation, but equally now with the venues, with the experience of the Chinese workforce around all of these venues, we're going to be feeling the positive legacy of this in China and across the world of winter sport for years to come. So it's not just the hardware, if you like, in the venues, it's the software with the knowledge and the experience of the people operating those venues that will give a positive legacy for winter sport in China and across the international landscape, probably for decades to come. And then the final point I just wanted to touch on is in regard to the athletes themselves. And here we continue to have a real focus on the athletes that are in isolation facilities in particular, and those that are in a close contact definition. As you know, with close contact, it's defined through the playbook that the athletes can train, can compete at these games. So there's a real focus on supporting those athletes that also are in isolation facilities. Now, the positive news is those numbers of athletes and officials are coming down. It's natural with the numbers that tested positive on arrival, and obviously with the peak arrivals now being throughout last week, it's natural that those numbers are coming down, but that's very positive. Equally, we had a call last night led by our Athletes Commission, and we reached out to all of the athletes that were in isolation to engage with them directly. This was led by Emma Terho, the chair of our Athletes Commission. At the start, Emma was very clear that these athletes remain part of the Games. They are still an incredibly important part of these Olympic Games. They're an important part of their national delegations, and the support that we and Beijing 2022 provide to them continues every single day, focusing both collectively in terms of any issues across the isolation facilities and individually, because every one of these athletes and officials is an individual and has an individual perspective and circumstance that we need to work with on them. As I say, the call was initiated by the suggestion from our Athletes Commission to support what's already being done through the NOCs and through Beijing 2022. It was led by Emma and had a number of our Athletes Commission on it as well. Emma gave a very strong message at the start of empathy for these athletes, acknowledging, as I said, that they are a fundamental part of this Games and are still part of their delegations, and increasingly as they come out of isolation, they're obviously always going to be part of that delegation. The key points that were raised were ones that have been raised previously from the athletes, things like internet, where we're working with Beijing on providing individual solutions based on the property, additional SIM cards, all of those things to ensure full access to the internet for these athletes. The meals, where there have been significant improvements, but there were some individual cases raised that already Beijing has addressed overnight. Access to sport equipment, because it's very important that there's a high level of physical fitness that can be maintained under the circumstances. So access to sport equipment in the room itself was a key point. And equally, points around mental health. And on that point, I think you've heard from us previously how important mental health is for these athletes and more generally. And there again, we were very clear about the access that every one of those athletes has to mental health support, both through their NOC, but also through the support services that the IOC has put in place across a number of languages, with direct access for any one of those individuals to all of the support programs that the IOC has put in place around mental health. And all of that information has been made individually available to every one of those athletes. So again, we're working both across the system and individually to address all of the feedback we get from those athletes. And there was a real message of direct engagement, direct support from our Athletes Commission to those athletes. And that call was joined by Madame Han from Beijing. So it was led by the Athletes Commission, but with the full support of the senior Beijing leadership on the call, listening to the athletes, addressing individual circumstances, and of course by the IOC as well. So that's where we are on the sport front, and again, really looking to support each of those athletes in isolation and equally continue the outstanding start to these games we've seen on the field of play, and I think is continuing right now across the number. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kit. Okay, let's now go to questions and answers. Yeah, we'll start with the guy in the front here, and then I think there's an AP question after that. So yeah.
谢谢主持人，我是中央广播电视总台记者。提问杨淑安主席。冬奥会自开赛以来，我们的整体的赛事运行情况是什么样的？然后请您举例说明一下。另外呢，我们也了解到啊，整个的这个竞赛的日程呢，我们也经过了10几次的修订。那么我们这种修订的依据是什么？目的又是什么？谢谢。
Yes, please. Sorry, yes, please, if you would.
Thank you, Mark.
Exactly. Hang on.
好，谢谢我们央视总台记者朋友啊刚才的提问。我刚才讲到赛事运行啊，总体上是非常顺利，也得到了单项联合会的高度认可。如果说要举一个例子的话呢，我想就举首都体育馆，因为首都体育馆它是花样滑冰和短道速滑2个项目的竞赛都在一个场馆里面。短道速滑和花样滑冰对冰面的温度和厚度都有不同的要求，它就面临着场地的转换，包括保护垫的转换。大家看到这个短道速滑这个运动员摔出去了以后，它的冲击力很强，但是花样滑冰它需要的保护垫和短道速滑的保护垫也是不一样的。所以再通过这个转场工作，大家就可以看到这个北京冬奥作为我们竞赛团队啊，和场馆团队密切配合，是高水平高质量的完成了这种转场的这个环节啊，都是在规定的时间内完成转场。准备好下一场赛事的开展，所以这是从一个方面。如果央视的朋友想听听例子，当然还有很多了，我就不占用大家的这个时间。关于竞赛日程的编排呢，确实是北京冬奥组委发布了13版的竞赛日程细节，每一版竞赛日程细节呢，都是要经过国际奥会正式批准以后，我们才能发布。那么编制这个竞赛日程最主要的就是要体现以运动员为中心，确保运动员有足够的训练和赛间调整的时间，它都要符合规则的要求。同时呢，要兼顾各个不同利益相关方的需求，比如说你们电视媒体的需求， 根据这个地球是圆的，太阳出来的时间是不一样的，那要考虑到各个利益相关方，对不起，都能接受的这样一个原则来编排它。同时，我们还要考虑到冰和雪之间的相对的平衡，考虑到不同赛区之间的相对的平衡。这是竞赛日程变更啊，每一次变更都是有了一些新的需求，一是反映出全球媒体啊对北京冬奥会的期待，大家都希望能够来转播北京冬奥会的一些赛事，那么根据他们的需求，如果确有必要，我们就要进行必要的调整，所以是经过了这样一个漫长的过程，最后把它稳定下来的。我希望这个回答你能满意，谢谢。
Kit, did you want to add or?
No, I think Xuan outlined it perfectly. A really good example with the men's downhill yesterday, which followed exactly this process. As you said, it's led by Beijing, but fundamentally the International Federation is there to give advice about the technical elements, and then we fit it into a wider games perspective with broadcast and other operational elements, but the athletes are always first along with the technical rules of the sport. And yesterday, Xuan, you cut me off to contradict me.
Yes, thank you, Kate. 昨天这个高山滑雪男子滑降的赛事啊，我们做了变更。我想说呢，第一，滑雪运动本身就包括了挑战大自然，包括风在内的大自然。但是第二，我们人类要尊重自然，尊重自然规律。第三，要尽最大的努力保护运动员的安全。昨天日程调整呢，就是因为山顶啊，这个阵风过大，有可能会造成运动员的安全受到影响，所以为了解决这个潜在的风险，经过北京冬奥组委、国际奥委会、国际单项体育联合会和 OBS， 我们共同来研究。这也是这个综合性运动会啊，我们有一个竞赛日程变更管理委员会，我们通过电话会议的形式，大家认识都是一致的，所以昨天把男子滑降的比赛延迟到今天中午12点举行，这是变更的原因了。7项。
Thank you very much. Let's go to AP now. I think wanted a question, and then we'll come to the lady down here, and then gentleman there. Yeah.
Hi, Sarah DiLorenzo, AP. In the wake of Peng Shui's dinner with President Bach and her interview with L'Equipe, I'm wondering if the IOC believes that Peng was not assaulted, and do they feel she's speaking freely or under duress, and how are you determining if she's speaking freely or under duress?
Thanks very much. I will obviously come to those questions just in a second, but let me, I think first, I know you've probably seen the statement, but some people haven't, so I'm just going to read our statement this morning, also for our colleagues in television and radio as well, and then I'll come to your questions. So the IOC statement. The IOC president held a face-to-face meeting with Peng Shui as announced last November. He was joined by the former chair of the Athletes Commission and IOC member Kirsty Coventry. The meeting took place on Saturday over dinner at the Olympic Club in Beijing. Peng Shui informed the president that she would attend several events at the Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022 over the coming days. Later that evening, she and Kirsty Coventry attended the mixed curling match between China and Norway. During the dinner, the three spoke about their common experience as athletes at the Olympic Games, and Peng Shui spoke of her disappointment at not being able to qualify for the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. In this context, she also shared her intention to travel to Europe when the COVID-19 pandemic is over, and the IOC president invited her to Lausanne to visit the IOC and also the Olympic Museum to continue the conversation on their Olympic experiences. Peng Shui accepted this invitation. Kirsty Coventry and Peng Shui also agreed that they would remain in contact, and all three agreed that any further communication about the content of the meeting would be left to her discretion. The in-person meeting in Beijing followed a series of telephone conversations with Peng Shui over the past few months, which started on the 21st of November with a call attended by the IOC president and the current chair of the IOC Athletes Commission, Emma Terho, who unfortunately could not take part in the meeting in Beijing. That's our statement from this morning. To answer your question, I don't think it's a judgment for the IOC to make. We are a sporting organisation, and our job is to remain in contact with her, and as we've explained in the past, to carry out personal, quiet diplomacy, to keep in touch with her as we've done, to meet her in person as we've done, and now invite her to Lausanne to see us. She had a long conversation with Kirsty Coventry yesterday, I think, at the curling the day before. So we, as a sports organisation, are doing everything to ensure that she is happy, and I don't think it's up for us to be able to judge in one way, just as it's not for you to judge either in one way or another her position. Yes, lady there, and then we'll go. No, lady. Sorry, the lady here first. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, sir, and then we'll have the gentleman over there. We'll come back to you in a second. Sorry. Oh. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mark. 我是来自山东广播电视台体育广播的记者，我想提给舒安主席。那么在前2天呢，巴赫主席来到这里的时候说在北京举办冬奥会能够有力的推进世界体育产业的发展扩大它的版图。刚才你也介绍了，我们场馆设施各个方面呢都赢得了交口称赞。那么我们在体育产业、体育装备方面，在本届奥运会的这个助推作用是怎么样的？刚才呢，基特先生也说到了，这个体育装备对于运动员提高成绩非常的重要。那么我们中国制造，像小到衣服防寒服，大到我们也知道像保障运动员的这种雪拉车等等吧，这些创新点，能做一些评价吗？谢谢舒安主席。
好，谢谢我们山东体育广播的媒体朋友你们的提问。我首先想讲体育产业，用我们中国的话讲呢，它是一项朝阳产业。随着人类的进步，经济发展水平的不断提高，人们对体育运动这样的业余生活更加需要。所以从这个角度讲呢，体育产业它是一项朝阳产业。那么北京冬奥会呢，也是充分的体现了这个我们的科技元素，但更多的还有就是国际化我们很多冰场、雪场都是一种国际化的安排但是我们想呢，它仍然有很长的路要走我们呢还是一个发展中的大国那么还需要有一段时间的积累和沉淀。但是北京冬奥会呢，为我们进一步打开了发展冬季项目的这个视野使我们看到了世界最新科技的发展，看到了我们这个产业的前景这次冬奥会呢，我们国产的一些器材呢，也用到了冬奥会的赛场上，应该说也得到了好评，也是非常的不错。比如说，首都体育馆，我仍然举首都体育馆的这个例子，短道速滑的保护垫，它对运动员的安全是至关重要的。但这些保护垫来自于我们河北的生产的，这个保护垫非常好，运动员很满意。这也使我们的体育产业的从业人员看到了更多的希望同时呢也认识到我们发展还需要通过什么样的改革的措施进一步来提高我们的发展的能力，提升我们的水平这又是一个从经济学的角度讲，它是一个长线的项目，需要长期不懈的努力才能去把它发展起来。当然我们也有很多世界一流的这个产品应用到了北京的 这个冬奥会上面，我就不再举例子讲了。总之呢，它是体育事业发展的一个非常好的一个独特的机会，也当然也包括了我们体育产业的发展。谢谢你。
Okay, we're going to have the gentleman there, then the lady, and then I'm going to come over here for some questions. So, yeah.
Yeah, hi. Jonathan Crane from Deutsche Welle. Just to follow up on the AP question, I know you've just said you don't want to judge if Peng Shuai is speaking freely. I just want to pick up on something that President Thomas Bach said in the press conference the other day, that he said the IOC would support an inquiry if Peng demanded that. So my question is, what conversations have there been with officials here in Beijing about a possible investigation? And does the IOC think that is actually possible for Peng to do? Can she make that demand without fear of any repercussion? Thank you.
As I say, I'm not sure. Excuse me. I'm not sure we're able, as a sports organisation, to make that call. I think the president was right in saying it shouldn't be for us to judge whether there should be an investigation or not. You've seen the words. Which in the interview which she gave to L'Equipe, I think it was an hour and more interview yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, which was published this morning. I think we need also to listen to her, and we need to read what she's saying. As we've also discussed, we've been in contact with her. We remain in contact with her. We've met her in person. We've invited her to come to Europe, and we will meet her again. And I think we can say that we are doing everything we can to make sure that this situation is as it should be. Yeah, lady there.
谢谢马克，我这个问题是问给杨树安副主席的，因为这几天呢，中国运动员都表现得特别的拼搏，而且成绩也很好。我想问一个问题，就是在他们这些运动员在出征之前，会有一个预期嘛？就比如金银铜牌的预期，或者哪些项目我们要进前8或前4，还有一些优势的项目。那么优势的原因是什么？您再帮我们深度解读解读，因为这几天我们在比赛中都看到了中国运动员的拼搏精神。谢谢。
好，谢谢这位媒体朋友的提问。我可以告诉你啊，我是来自于中国奥委会，来自于体育界，但是我现在的主要工作是做北京冬奥组委的赛事的组织运行啊，这个管理工作。我已经大概有4、5年的时间啊，没有再参与中国奥委会啊内部的一些工作了。我现在要做的是关心所有的运动员。不仅仅是中国运动员，就像 Kate 先生刚才给大家也都介绍了一些相关的情况。从北京冬奥组委这个角度讲，我们是关心所有的运动员，希望所有的运动员都能通过这个赛场去创造他们的优异成绩。那么奥林匹克还有一项很重要的传统啊，重要的是参与而不在于这个名次本身。我想这次冬奥会啊，很多运动员创造了很优秀的成绩。可能这个优秀的成绩啊，不仅仅是有没有打破奥林匹克的纪录，有没有取得金银铜牌，而是他自己和自己比，有了巨大的进步。对运动员来讲，也是一项成功啊。所以这是我想跟你说的第一点。第二点呢，当然作为中国人，我们期待中国运动员在这一届冬奥会上能够取得优异的成绩，但是你问我他们到底准备拿多少，有什么指标没有？我相信没有指标。我们习主席专门讲过，我们希望运动员拿干干净净的金牌，拿遵纪守法的金牌，拿体育道德的金牌，而不是具体的哪一个项目一定要拿多少金牌。运动员拿金牌，我们肯定是高兴。欢欣鼓舞，我们也期望着中国运动员能够在这一届冬奥会上取得好的成绩。但是从我来讲呢，我不知道，但是我知道要求是很清楚的，就干干净净的金牌，体育道德的金牌，遵纪守法的金牌。谢谢你。
Thank you very much. Yeah, go to, I think it's Christoph Becker there. Yeah, thanks.
Good morning, Chris Afeka, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. I've got two questions, if I may. One to you, Kit, and the Chinese gentleman on the issue that you touched, the experiences by the athletes who are in isolation and who are describing clearly what they perceive as fairly dystopian experiences. Who feels responsible that this situation has arisen again and that the athletes are making the experience that they are making? And Kit, on one of the issues that you mentioned, providing internet connection, would that be internet connection that goes beyond the Great Firewall? Would the athletes be able to actually step outside China's censorship of the internet with the SIM cards? And then secondly, on Pang Shuai, just like to know what is the rationale behind Kirsty Coventry being chosen, the apparent liaison to her now, given that she is a politician herself, and Pang Shuai is or has been in a relationship that has some traits of being an abusive relationship with a politician. Thank you.
Kit, do you want to kick off with that one?
Thank you for the question. I think, look, the athletes in isolation, as I said, remain an absolute focus for all of us. There's a collective responsibility to support these athletes, and I think that was shown on the call last night. The call was initiated by our IOC Athletes Commission at their suggestion, led by Emma as the Athletes Commission chair. We had, as I said, Madam Huan and the senior leadership from Beijing who were responsible for dealing directly with those properties. We invited all of the NOC representatives of those athletes to the call, as well as IF representatives. This is the support network that we have for these athletes, collectively and individually. So the real message, again, was understanding what the athletes are experiencing, addressing that as we have with the steps that have been taken on all of those areas I addressed, and understanding where there are still some individual circumstances which are challenging. And we heard some of those last night across those areas. And we know that that's not easy for anyone in that situation, but particularly an athlete who's gone through the journey to get here and is in a situation where at this stage they're not with the delegation in the village and they have some uncertainty over participation in many cases. So we absolutely understand the situation that some of those athletes have been in. That's been addressed right from the start. In many cases, the facilities and the services have reflected what was committed, and where there have been challenges, obviously, we're concerned about those and have addressed them collectively with the various people responsible, as I mentioned. So that dialogue is happening, and I think the call last night really symbolised the collective focus on addressing any of those individual circumstances where those challenges still exist. In regard to the internet, I think Mark can answer that in terms of the wider point, but what we did discuss was providing them with the same internet access that everyone else at the Games has, so they feel connected to it. And maybe, Mark, you can answer the wider point on the internet. But again, our focus is really understanding any particular issues and addressing them as quickly as we can, and that's collective between Beijing, who's responsible for the dialogue with those hotels and properties, but also with the NOCs to understand the individual circumstances in each case and tell the athletes they can reach out to any of us at any time, and we will listen and we will act.
Yeah, listen, on the SIM cards, I obviously think it's a question for BOCOG eventually, but I can't give you the absolute details of those SIM cards. What I can tell you is that what you know is that all athletes, all of us, have access beyond the firewall. So I would hope so. We will find out for you. I don't know if BOCOG wants to answer the general questions.
我补充一下，在隔离设施呢，我们给这个运动员提供了开放网络的服务，这一点请放心。
Yeah, and just to say, obviously, Emma couldn't take part in the face-to-face meetings, unfortunately, because she had been in isolation, so it wasn't possible. She will remain and obviously will come back into the relationship. And Kirsty obviously was chosen because she is the former chair of the Athletes Commission, the former elected chair of the Athletes Commission, so it made perfect sense. I didn't really quite follow the other point you parallel you were trying to draw. But let's have, actually, let's go to Reuters, and then we come over here. I think there's a question.
Thank you, Mark. Carlos Groman from Reuters. Just a question for BOCOG. Given that the meeting was with Peng Shui took place at the Olympic Club and she had previously been at the curling event, were you aware of the meeting taking place yesterday? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a question to you.
I thank you so much for your questions. Actually, frankly speaking, from BOCOG side, we only focus on the games operation. We have no any kind of the connection with the.
I was just about to say sorry, but yes, that, to my understanding, they had no knowledge of it because obviously our interlocutor here has always been the Chinese Olympic Committee, and they did have knowledge of it and helped to arrange it. But we have never worked all the way through this process with BOCOG. So. Yeah, there was a lady there, yeah, and then we'll come to the inside the games after that.
Hello, Xinhua News Agency. Question to Mr. McConnell. So there has been discussions on the artificial snow at the competition venues, whether it's good or bad for the athletes. So what do you think of the overall quality of snow, and did you receive any feedbacks from the athletes? Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think, first of all, the feedback, as I mentioned earlier, has been really outstanding from the athletes. This came through the training period and then through the first days of competition. And this is the feedback from the athletes through the federations is really the key to making sure they have those fields of play to compete on. In regard to the snow, I think there's been a lot of discussion recently and probably a greater understanding about the way that the snow is produced across the world of winter sport now. And so I think most of the questions there have been answered. But again, the focus is on doing this in a sustainable way, but also ensuring that the athletes have an outstanding field of play for them to compete at the Olympic level on. So I think most of the detailed questions there have been answered previously.
Okay, let's go to inside the games. I'm going to come across here again in a minute. Yeah.
Hi, it's Jeff Barkley, Inside the Games. How many athletes are in isolation or close contacts? And my other question is about the situation with the Polish short track speed skater. She tested positive, then was released from isolation, then tested positive again. And obviously she missed competition. How are we getting such fluctuating cases? Because obviously there was a situation with the Australian curlers as well. How is this happening?
On the figures, I think if you're okay, I mean, we can get you an answer, but if you're okay, we have Brian McCluskey here tomorrow, who's the chair of the medical expert panel. Probably can give you the full rundown, but if you have specific questions, we can also furnish you with those. On the other two specific questions about the Polish skater and the Australian athlete, over to you, Kit.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and thanks for the question. Firstly, in the case of Natalia Malešeska, the Polish short track skater, I mean, firstly, it's great. I think she was training yesterday. Of course, our thoughts are with her and anyone that is in that situation of missing an event, as she did with the first event that she was due to compete in, I think, on day one. Equally, the system is there to protect both the individual safety and health and the wider. And that's why all of these rules regarding testing are in place. And I think the system has been shown to be incredibly strong, both in the build-up to and the first days of competition. But of course, in any individual circumstances, our thoughts are with her or any athlete who, as a result of the testing program, has had to miss a competition. So really positive to see her back on the ice, and I understand she's got a second opportunity for an event in a couple of days' time as well. And as Mark said, in regard to the interpretation of results and the implementation of that process, Dr. Brian McCluskey, the chair of the medical expert panel, who is in charge of reviewing those individual cases and providing recommendations, is here tomorrow to talk through that process. And I think you touched on the Australian curler as well in the mixed doubles, and again, very positive to see that ultimately she was on the ice as well yesterday, and I think had two great results. And Brian can talk through the interpretation and the process around that. But again, we're trying to put the athletes first in every case, and there it was great to see her on the ice competing and finishing her competition in a really strong way yesterday.
Thank you very much, Kit. Yeah, lady here, and then at the back there, yeah.
我的问题是提给 Kate， 我是来自中央广播电视台的记者。我注意到啊，在过去开幕式过后的这2个竞赛日里边，无论是在短道速滑还是在速度滑冰的赛场上，基本上是比一项就破一项奥运会的记录。无论是女子的500米、男子1000米的预赛就破了，这是指短道速滑就破了奥运会纪录。然后在速度滑冰的赛场上，无论是那个女子3000米的决赛的金牌是破了20年的这个奥运会纪录，男子5000米是破，无论是金银牌选手都破了奥运会纪录。所以我想这个现象，想请 Kit 先生评价一下，这是否除了一个非常强势的竞技水平之外，也跟中国的这个场馆的设施和冰面的条件有关系？然后在您看来，接下来这个破纪录的这个势头，是否也会成为本届冬奥会竞赛的一个特点和现象？谢谢。
That's a good question. It's a little bit hard for me to predict the coming days. I think what we can say is, first of all, it's great to see, again, the venues that have been provided in the field of play preparation. And you've seen the performances, not only in terms of world record, but more widely across all of the sports we've seen so far. So this is really a fantastic testament to the organising committee and the venues themselves, but equally, we need the athletes also to perform on these fields of play. And here, I think what has come through also is the spirit amongst the athletes, but the incredible focus that they have kept on their performances. And we've seen that come through in the first 2 days of competition, despite all of the journey over the recent years through qualification, with the changes in the event landscape, with in some cases uncertainty over international travel and everything else. To see these performances really a testimony to those athletes and the focus they've kept, the preparation they've had, and equally I hope the system they feel part of here to allow them to focus on the competition and deliver those performances. So really congratulations to every single one of those athletes for those performances, and I think it's really a testament to them individually, but also the real focus of these games now on the field of play and the sport while dealing with those issues that have been raised.
Yeah, gentleman there. Yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Marcus Moore. I'm with ABC News out of the United States. Thank you for taking my question. I just have a couple of quick follow-ups on the IOC president's meeting with Peng Shuai. First, why was the meeting not disclosed over the weekend? And also, will Mr. Bach be, during the games, addressing his meeting with Peng Shuai? Thank you.
I think both of those, hopefully, or the second one particularly, are dealt with in the statement. Which is, I think, they've all agreed that what they want to say is there in the statement, so he won't be addressing it beyond what we've discussed already. You're free to ask him questions, and I'm sure he will possibly say more, but I think we're going to stick to the statement. Why was it not released earlier? We released it when we thought it was the right time. I mean, obviously, we are not doing this for the media cycle. We are doing it because we want to keep people informed, and we're doing it because we want to support her. We're not doing it because we want to hit a certain moment and release it at a certain time. We released the statement this morning because we had the statement ready. It's as simple as that. Yeah, gentleman there in white.
Hello, thank you for taking my question. I'm with China Global Television Network. I have a question to both Mr. Yang and Mr. McCornell. So I want to have both of you comment on the Olympics impact to the host nation, given that by the fact that for Team China, this is their first time ever to participate in the Olympics in all sports. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I will start, Xuan. I'm sure you'll add on. Firstly, I think it's a record size of the Chinese team in an Olympic Winter Games. And if we come back to the gender equality, I think when we look at the numbers we saw this morning, that there were 174 athletes registered in the Chinese team, and almost an exact gender equality between those numbers, which is great in terms of both the representation across all sports, as you noted, and I think it's about 100 events that they're actually entered into, as well as the gender equality. Now, this has a number of impacts. Obviously, like all of us, we probably remember the first time we saw athletes from our country participating in an Olympic Games. We probably have very clear mental images about those TV images that we were probably seeing. And this will be the same for young people throughout China now. I mean, we've talked a lot, and there's been incredible success in the 300 million Chinese being involved in winter sport. But you can imagine the inspiration that's happening around the country right now, seeing these Chinese athletes across all of these events. And the new generation that will not only be aspired, but actually have access to winter sport as a result of that inspiration. So here, this is really fantastic to see. And as we said earlier, the impact and the legacy is not only going to be from those physical venues and everyone that will have experience in operating those. The impact is going to be felt across winter sport for a long way to come. And I think, as our president has said, China is now a winter sport country. And this will be felt across all of those sports, and not only here over these 16 days, but over the seasons to come and the generations to come, probably, with the inspiration that comes from these athletes. So for us, we really see that on the field of play around the world in the years to come. In those events where China has been traditionally strong, but now with the access and the participation in some of these new events, we hope to see that being more widely as well. But, Xuan, you want to add on? Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And I think our Chinese friend fully understood, it's a very positive impact for the Chinese society. We have already reached the goal since our national president Xi mentioned the Olympic Winter Games will encourage the 300 million Chinese to get involved with the winter sports. So according to our statistics, we have already have the 346 million Chinese get involved. It's a huge number. It's a huge achievement. And the other side, for winter sports facilities, before we bid for the Olympic Winter Games here in Beijing, frankly speaking, we have only a few winter sports facilities for the local residents. But now, almost over all of the China, different cities, different regions, different provinces, they have a very, very positive attitude to build a lot of winter sports venues or facilities for the local person. They can participate, can practice. If you look at the short video during our games time, very, very later case, the skier or skating, fantastic. It's kind of the inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We've reached midday, that's an hour, and I think we've reached our time. So thank you very much. I will see you again, same time, for an hour of lively discussion tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to my guests. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.